Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Womb as the Master Programmer. This is our first Zoom conversation, and who we have here today are some of the members from our Galactic Astrology group that we had this spring and went through the eclipse cycle. And in August of 2018, we finished that group, and people have been studying on their own. And we have just come through another eclipse cycle, so we are beginning our next series. And this Zoom conference is the first of those. And this will be a commitment to bring the magic back to the planet through these magi who have been studying astrology. And we're also going to be inviting other alchemists, those people who have the magic, they know what they want to do for the planet, and we're going to bring us all together regularly to create intention and to spell that which we cast in these beautiful sessions. So the first thing that I wanted to do before we jump into the astrology of it is I wanted us all to connect to the womb space. And whether it's your masculine womb space or your mother's womb space or your child's womb space, I want us all to just breathe together for a moment and feel the breath come deep down into the belly and connect to the feeling of the first and second chakra and the womb space. So just start to breathe deeply. And draw that breath all the way down into the womb. And as you continue to breathe, start to pulse and vibrate with your womb. So drawing the muscles in and up, start to connect with the actual sensation and feeling of your womb. So in yoga, it's called Mula Bandh. So draw and lift that first and second chakra and just start to activate that space so that we can physically feel the womb space. Okay. And now that we've connected physically with the sensation of the body, what I would like for you to do is bring in the awareness of brilliant white light. And bring that awareness down into the body and start swirling it, just like I was holding the shell and the incense was coming. Start to swirl that brilliant white light through your womb or your womb space. So see it moving like you're stirring a pot, and continue the breath. Good. And then from that womb space, start to see that swirling around your whole body, a brilliant white light swirling around. And setting intention now that that brilliant white light is going to keep moving and start to move past and beyond the walls of your house. And that is going to start blessing every womb of every being in all the kingdoms. So the female deer, the raccoons, the squirrels, the mice, all the wombs of all the creatures of all the kingdoms. Start to just feel that swirling. And swirling out through your local area, and start to see that brilliant white light from your womb moving out, because the womb is the ultimate programmer. Your womb is the ultimate magician or magi. And move that out. And now what I would like you to do is connect through your ancestral line also, whether your mother is in body or not. I would like you to envision her and see that brilliant white light go directly to your mother's womb. So envision her now. And see that brilliant white light swirling around her body. And if you have daughters or sons, see that brilliant white light connect to those children, the womb of the womb of the womb. And continue. Now see the grandmother, if you can remember your grandmother, and see her womb and her image, and swirl that brilliant white light around her. Both grandmothers. Oh, the grandmothers, the womb of the womb of the womb of the womb. And keep going back, all the way back in time, to all the grandmothers, all the wombs, every womb blessing, 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 and forward through the generations, blessing and blessing and blessing and blessing. Okay? And then I want you to bring that, all of that womb back down into your womb, and we're going to do a very special session today, okay, about the womb. So bring that line all the way back. All of them have been connected back to your womb, and see that white swirling in your womb again. And it is just like the galaxy swirling around the great attractor, which is a giant womb at 14 degrees Sagittarius. All that brilliant starlight is swirling around your womb. And then as a fun and game today for my Sagittarius nature, we're going to send that all out to the people at the Superbowl. We're going to send all those womb blessings out to the people who are sitting in the stadiums in the United States at the Superbowl. And we're going to fill that stadium with Shakti and brilliant white light. So go ahead and send it. Anyone who's willing to receive it, you can receive it now. And we're going to see the whole stadium swirling with that brilliant white light. And just imagining if every single one of those persons who are watching the football game today were here doing the womb blessing with us. Well, we're going to invite them in as much as they like to into this consciousness and bless every single womb. Mother, father, child, all the womb spaces of all the beings. Keep sending it out. And then let it radiate out to every single viewer who's going to be watching that all across the planet. And just imagine that every time that football is thrown, which is the shape of the yoni, it's a womb, and it's passing its grace and its blessing. So go ahead and do that. Yeah. It's a womb. And let everyone's consciousness come to the grace from which we all came through the portal from that galaxy through the incredible womb. And breathe that in and breathe that out. Good. And so whenever you want to bless the womb, this is the Magi. Okay, this is the intention. I will it to be so, that there be as much attention on the womb and conversations like this as there are on football. And so it is. Now, would anyone like to add anything to that womb blessing right now before I give us a quick introduction of how to see the womb space in an astrology chart? Nobody's saying anything. Good. Lindsay, you want to say anything?
No.
Okay, good. Okay. And so anyone who has actually been physically in ceremony with me, that womb space is the ultimate programmer. okay? And we know today is a balsamic moon when the psychic energy is very strong and we plant a seed. So we're doing that right now. We're planting a very strong seed into the psyche on this day. Now, before people start jumping into what's going on in their chart, I want to just give an overview because this will be on our Galactic Astrology website page. I want to just show quickly how we find the womb space in the chart, and then we can continue to bless every single person's discussion about their own womb experience in their chart during our session today. But when we draw a chart, what we do is we have the whole sign rising so that the ascendant is somewhere inside of the first house. And inside of that first house, there will be planets and asteroids, possibly the north node or the south node, which will tell you a lot about the womb experience that you came into. Also, before the ascendant is any planet between the ascendant and into the 12th house tells about what your mother was feeling, thinking, reading about, what she was doing, whether she felt supported or not. And to some extent, this 12th house is your past life. So in the charts, we want to make it conscious for people. What is usually unconscious completely, we want to be able to show them in astrology how to find out what this unconscious program is that's running and make it more conscious. So before I start reading a chart, I want to know if anyone wants to talk about their chart and what they have figured out, or if they've had a conversation with their own mother about the womb experience.
Hi. Sorry. I spoke with my mom.
Okay, tell us, Lindsay.
Yeah, so for people that have seen your other classes on astrology, I've spoken about this before, but it was interesting to confirm with my mother. I have an unaspected moon, which I'm sure you'll talk about. And it's also a void of course moon. And my mom definitely was totally unsupported by her family and also by my father. She felt very alone the whole time she was pregnant and during the birth. My father actually wheeled a television into the room while she was giving birth to watch the World Series. So she was super alone, and it was interesting to do this exercise. We could talk about it later, but looking at that along with the 12th house in my ascendant. But it was a really good exercise, and I suggest everyone else do it if they have a chance.
So what I asked the group to do was to find out by talking to your mom about the womb story. So was she reading any particular books? Was she healthy? Was there a lot of emotional support? What was the labor actually like? Was dad there? Was the whole family cheering her on and saying, yay, you're pregnant, hooray, someone's coming in. This is so great. Because I'm finding after doing many chart readings that a lot of the subconscious material that we have actually happened in the womb. And no blame to mother, because what we've got to do as a society is start to get people having this conversation more so than wheeling in the TV and watching the World Series while mom's giving birth, which is Lindsay's making an incredible example for today, okay? So if your mom told you a story like that dad was like bringing in the TV while she was laboring, Lindsay, how do you think that that has affected you? Have you figured out, how has that affected you? Do you want to share that?
Well, I feel like because my mother was unsupported during her pregnancy with me and during the birth, she felt abandoned. She felt alone. And it's interesting because I spent a huge chunk of the beginning of my life feeling like that myself. And I had to learn to be my own mother. you know, so I don't know if that's what you were asking, but it was kind of like, wow, like like what she was feeling kind of got programmed into me the beginning of my life here. But at the same time, based on astrology, I feel like I chose that because that made me work really hard to become my own mother, essentially, and in a way, I've mothered my own mother.
Mhm.
You know?
Okay. Yeah, so that's exactly what I mean, Lindsay. So Lindsay has studied her chart enough to know that her unaspected moon means that there are not other planets making geometrical aspects in support of her moon. And then when she found the details from actually asking her mother the womb story, what I'm also hearing Lindsay say is that she chose that, which is a very important piece of being a shaman astrologer, is that we realize that we come into particular wombs to do ancestral healing, that we look for a womb, that would be the perfect place to come in and learn all the soul lessons that we have, but also to support, you know, our children and the way that we live our lives in blessing our womb and asking for support when we need it. Okay, so Lindsay, do you want to say anything else right now? Okay, anybody, who else would like to talk about what they found out?
Yeah, I'll talk about it.
Emily.
So I have no planets in my 12th house. I have asteroids. And I think what you were just saying about there being no planets is that there wasn't a lot going on. My mum was they weren't married, so it was awkward. She didn't really have anywhere to live. And there's also Persephone there in the 12th house and Athena. So that really relates to her experience, I feel, especially in the labor. I'm not sure in the 12th house if that's as relevant, but in the labor she was abandoned in the hallway, actually. So it is like a recurring experience for me, like feeling subconsciously like I'm going into a hellish space or trying to bring myself out of that, and feeling that in my childhood. But with the Athena, I do feel like my mom is a warrior, so I do feel like that from her womb, like this warrior spirit of going into the darkness that she's really experienced in her life, but being able to be a warrior woman as well. That's what I picked up.
Yeah. Did you talk to your mom? Did you have a conversation with her at length about what she felt like when you were in the womb? What did she feel like? She was supported, or she was scared, or did she feel like she could breathe, or she had some big questionable unknown? Did you talk to her about that?
No, I'm seeing her this week. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can hear from Emmeline, and Emmeline is in England, so she looks sleepy because we're having this really late her time, but we're really grateful that you hear Emmeline. So I would agree that if you have Athena there in the 12th house, that could also indicate that you were coming from a Amazonian warrior type background.
Yeah.
Came in through that womb to like help heal that Persephone type of abduction and darkness and alone, like in the underworld feeling. So you may have been kind of the Athenian power. Sometimes the planets in the 12th house are like where you're coming from also, and then merging with the womb to pick up the ancestral healing that line needs. Do you understand that?
And there's also asteroid Ceres just before my ascendant, like a few degrees before my ascendant. So that links in with that, bringing that kind of bounty into her life.
Yeah. So Ceres would be an indication for the goddess of agriculture and fertility and abundance, and kind of the shepherdess of all the other asteroids is there at the first breath. And that really marks you tremendously, Emmeline, as being this character who brings forth that great abundance. Do you understand that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. Anything else you want to share right now?
That's good.
Okay, yeah, so blessings to that womb. Every time we hear a story, let's send blessings to that womb. Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to share right now?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, I didn't really recently talk to my mother about this, but, well, first of all, I only have Chiron in the 12th house and nothing else before my ascendant. I know the stories of my birth and that my mom had a kind of a long labor with a lot of back pain. Like I wasn't like ready. Like it was my time, but it was prolonged. It was painful, and there was some use of forceps to help me out. And that even as a child, I was kind of like the cranky child, very colicky. And I'm my mom's firstborn, so she has never really expressed it to me, but I suspect that there was a lot of nervousness. You know, my dad was there. I feel like she was supported, but she probably felt young and probably felt a little bit unready. And I kind of ask her about it, and she's very practical, and she doesn't want to go there.
Yeah. So Chiron in the 12th house would indicate possibly coming from a place of feeling abandoned or somehow an outcast. We know the original story was the rape of the sea nymphs, and that Chiron was part god and part stallion, basically interdimensional being. So that you were coming through possibly as something that was like half horse, half human, part sea nymph. And then you said, Holly, that you were kind of colicky.
As a baby, yeah. My mom had, she chalks it up to a lot of me being her first baby, but her mother thought that I was a very temperamental baby, very needed a lot of attention, was very colicky and fussy. Now, on the other side of the family, my great-grandmother cared for me a lot and thought I was a wonderful baby. And so that's interesting that the two different sides of the family have different memories of me as an infant. One thought that I was a very fussy, sickly baby, and the other one thought I was this like glowing, wonderful, always well-behaved, easy to care for baby.
Right. Isn't that interesting? And that is like the sea nymphs or the centaurs, right? Like the sea nymphs are like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do with this. The centaurs are like, oh, we know how to do this baby perfectly.
Yeah.
But also notice in the background, what we're seeing right now is dark like a cave, which Chiron often spent a lot of time in a cave. So a lot of this stuff does show up again and again and again, and we just are really bringing it to consciousness by studying astrology, because Chiron needed to kind of heal the wounds by being alone in the cave for a while.
Yeah, and I was probably the most independent child. I have two younger sisters, and I was the one that I would go off in the woods by myself. I didn't have any fear of that, but I felt much more socially awkward in like social situations. So, that kind of that Chiron centaur thing, feeling more at home at nature, but less at home with like society.
Yeah, that's very telling. So I hope everyone's hearing this, so that when you encounter a chart with that in the chart, you're seeing the cave, you're seeing, that needs to be more involved in nature than out there with the people. What I'm also wondering is, has anyone looked at their their prenatal lunar or solar eclipse and want to talk about that piece and explain to people, because you've already studied this, what does that mean, the prenatal eclipse, if you want to? I'll talk if you're not going to talk.
Well, because this is a learning session, I'll talk. I don't feel like I've been actually, from what you taught, and I've been digging in even more about the eclipses and the nodes, because they represent our past lives and our future lives, and they're so important in the chart. And mine is I have my lunar eclipse in my 7th house of Capricorn, and it's conjunct my south node. And it's the top of a kite in my chart. So like all the energy in my life is going towards my south node, and the eclipse, my purpose of being here, which is, I don't think very common, because I think we're often more focused on our north node. So I'm balancing the two. And then I had a solar eclipse in the womb too, which is in my 2nd house of Leo, which is all about my self-worth. And I feel like that's been a lot, because I've also kind of been my own mother, and my mother wasn't available to me because she just didn't have the resources to be. So I had to give I had to work really hard to give myself my own self-worth. Like, I feel like a lot of people get it from their mothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I didn't, and it wasn't her fault. Like, I see that in the chart, and
yeah.
So it was really interesting to think about that. And I'm still slowly wrapping my head around the eclipses and in the natal chart. But I also wanted to follow up because I didn't mention this, and I think multiple people in this group don't have any planets in the 12th house, which I find is really interesting, Lalita.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you telling us if there's no planets in a house, you would look at the ruler of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the 12th house is Gemini, and the ruler for that house is Mercury, right? And my Mercury is at 1 degree in Scorpio in my 5th house, and it was retrograde until I was 16 years old. Because I looked that up, and when I was 16, my mother abandoned me, and I was raised by my father. But when I was 16, I moved in with my mother. So I find that like really, really interesting. And I also had no other planets before my ascendant, which is in Cancer.
Yeah. Good. So Lindsay's really able to communicate several different concepts right now that I'm going to break down and kind of review for a second so everyone can hear this. When I first started showing you a chart, you did see a chart that doesn't have any planets in the 12th house. So that's what it looks like. There are no planets there. Okay. And then Emmeline came in and said that she had Athena there, which we consider a very important asteroid, and Persephone, which is also a fairly important asteroid, depending on what else is going on in your chart. So then what Lindsay did was she looked to see the ruler of her 12th house, which was a Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. She's saying that Mercury was retrograde until she was 16. So she was in this deep review. Mercury's in Scorpio around sexual and emotional intensity and deep down into the darkest issues where the Scorpion could go. So she was reviewing like being motherless and who do I live with and how am I supported and how am I going to be my own mother? All of that comes in amazingly from your first breath, but I would actually take it all the way back to conception. So now let me ask you all a question, okay? Have you asked your mother what her lovemaking was like that created you? Did anyone ask?
I have actually asked before, like not recently, but in hindsight of asking, and I'm pretty certain that I was conceived around Valentine's Day, like so this time of year now, and I think it was in a sort of very random occurrence in a hotel, in a hotel room late at night after a dinner, just unplanned, not intending actually for a child at all. Yeah, but the actual lovemaking, I'd have to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is one of those hot topics, but from my experience of being an astrologer, here's a couple of things that everyone across the board wants to do while their parents are in body. They want to ask their birth story, everything about, from the time you were conceived right through when you took your first breath and what the hospital was like. and know that the seeds of everything that is deep in your unconscious realm is there. Because I was an astrologer before I conceived my children, I know exactly when my children were conceived and exactly how it made their chart. So the lovemaking and whether the womb was really cherished, and when the lovemaking, was it sacred? Was it intended? Did we do ceremony? Were we careful about the placement of the planets? Or were we fairly random and like right after the Superbowl in some kind of a rage on like a lot of beer, just, you know, went to it and created a baby? So in this session, again, the whole topic is the womb is the master programmer. And all of us have come through to do a certain amount of ancestral healing. But what I'm hoping from this conversation is we can start to inspire people to be more conscious in their lovemaking, in their conception, in the treatment and love and adoration of the womb space every single day. Because really, whether a woman's womb is healthy and vibrant and full of Shakti or not, is whether this planet is healthy, vibrant, and full of Shakti or not, because we are creating the children and we are creating the vibrations of this whole planet through our wombs, happiness or not. So does anyone want to say anything on that, just on that thread? Grant?
Do I have anything to add? Nope, I don't think I've got anything to further add on that one.
Okay. I love to see the one man who's like hanging in there for the Womb is the Master Programmer conference. Thank you for being here.
Oh, yes, absolutely. No, it's great. I've joined, I follow a womb mantra practice. I do mantras every morning in that. And I also did a doula training a year and a half ago now to sort of understand and be much more connected to that process of childbirth, pursuing a doula certification potentially. So, yep, I am an advocate and champion of the womb.
Thank you. Thank you, Grant. Thank you. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I was just going to say, because I actually waited to the last minute and I called my mom like an hour before the class this was recorded. And I did ask her about, I didn't ask her like details of the lovemaking, but she essentially told me that she had tried to leave my father multiple times before they conceived me. And that, so I think they weren't like very intimate and connected, but they both wanted a child. And they agreed to that, and they purposely made love to get pregnant. They got pregnant the first time. So that was interesting. Like, they weren't in love necessarily, but they wanted to bring a child into the world together.
Interesting. So, Lindsay, I'm going to put you on the spot, and you don't have to answer. But if you were an astrologer and you started to dig into this, what I would say to you is, do you see those same patterns in your life? I'm not going to make you answer, but so as an astrologer, once you worked with the client enough to find out these things, you would say, does that pattern continue in you? Can you make it conscious? Do you realize that that's continuing? Do you want to talk about it or not?
Very quickly, I will. I mean, it's already out there, I think, if people want to know about it. But my ex-husband and I also were not in love, but we definitely came together to make children. And we had 2 children together. And actually, when I was studying synastry charts with Lalita, we laid our chart on top of each other. And it was, every aspect was like, you should not be together. But both of our north nodes, it was our north node, I think it was our vertex, came together in our 5th house of children. It was like, you are destined to come together in this house, which we did. We had children, and then we separated. And I feel like I had to, it's really interesting. I was programmed in the womb this is what you do. Like, and I had to live it out to make it conscious, and it's very conscious now. And I won't do that again in a relationship, because now I'm really looking for deep connection and spiritual growth. And I don't know if my mother's ever had that. So I'm learning through her decisions.
Thank you, Lindsay. So we have 4 minutes left, and I just want to make sure this is a very short beginning, just to see how it works. We're playing around, but it's an important, because I wanted to start at the beginning, which is the womb. Let's start at the beginning for our conferences. Zany, you're on. Do you want to say anything?
Okay, I had to unmute. It's just fascinating. I didn't do my homework. I didn't talk to my mom about all that, but I've done enough past life stuff that I had a kind of an understanding about my birth. But looking at my chart, I have an empty 12th house. And my first house, I have, before my ascendant, I have Eris and my part of fortune. And then I know I'm kind of going through a bunch of stuff. And then looking across from my 12th house, which is Pisces, not looking across, but I have no planets in Pisces. Neptune is the ruling planet. So I look to my partnership house, the 7th house where Neptune is. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And wondering about my mom in partnership and with, you know, grandiose illusionary ideas about, you know, what it's like to be in a partnership, because she didn't have a very great marriage. And that's kind of the long of the short. I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm finding this very interesting, and just my mind is just clicking away.
Yeah, and I see your needles are clicking away too, Zany, which is excellent here on a winter
How
day.
can you see? Am I on the camera?
Yeah.
Wait, I'm not seeing myself.
That's okay, honey. We can see you, and we see your punching bag too, but we've got to start to close this now.
Okay. Thank you.
We've got just 1 minute, and this has been perfect, because what I really wanted to do, even though this one was very short, was just give people the idea of what it's like to study astrology and what you can make conscious in your life, and bless the womb that you came through, because all the wombs on the whole planet need blessing. I mean, we need to love wombs and the womb space, and hold it sacred, and our lovemaking sacred. And that, I feel, is the root of how things will rise on this planet. So we're going to close now, because we only have 1 minute, but let's all continue to talk and be dedicated to this kind of work, and make these conferences as popular and important as the Super Bowl. Okay? So blessings, everybody, and blessings to all the wombs on the whole planet and throughout the multiverse.